Alien girl shields human from raiders at dusk, exposing a truth meant to stay buried. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. The sun dipped low beneath the horizon, casting an orange glow across the desolate landscape. Jason Walker, a man weathered by time and countless battles, found himself at the edge of a vast canyon, the evening breeze biting into his exposed skin. He scanned the horizon, his senses heightened, his pulse quickening with each step. The air smelled faintly of metal and dust, a reminder of the harshness of the planet he had landed on. He had been sent here on a routine mission, but nothing about the situation felt routine. As he trudged forward, the soft crunch of gravel beneath his boots was the only sound that broke the silence. His mind raced, thoughts of home far away, and the loneliness that always followed him into every new place he visited. The distant rumble of engines pulled him from his thoughts. His instincts kicked in, and his hand instinctively went to the sidearm at his hip. A flash of movement caught his eye. In the distance, he saw figures approaching. Raiders, by the look of them. They were too far to identify yet, but the silhouette of their vehicle suggested they were trouble. He scanned his surroundings, looking for any cover, but there was nothing but an open field and the canyon's edge. He cursed under his breath, feeling the weight of his gear pulling at him. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, low and commanding. "You should move. Quickly." Jason turned to see a woman standing a few feet away, her silhouette outlined by the dying light of the sun. She was unlike any human he had ever seen. Her skin was a striking shade of green, her long hair flowing like liquid silver in the wind. Her eyes were the color of a stormy sea, intense and unyielding. She was tall. Nearly a head taller than Jason, and her body was lithe, yet radiated power. Jason's instincts screamed danger, but there was something else in her gaze. She wasn't threatening, at least not directly. "Who are you?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She tilted her head slightly, a glint of amusement in her eyes. "Zara," she said simply, stepping closer. "And you should not be here." Before Jason could respond, the sound of approaching engines grew louder. The raiders were closing in fast. Zara didn't hesitate. With a fluid motion, she reached out and grabbed Jason's arm, pulling him toward the cliff's edge. "Hold on," she instructed. In one swift motion, she leapt, pulling Jason with her, both of them landing with a roll on the rocky ground below. The raiders' vehicle sped past overhead, missing them by mere feet. Jason gasped, his heart racing. "What the hell was that?" he managed to say, looking up at Zara in disbelief. Zara's gaze was already scanning the area, her expression serious. "We're not safe yet," she said quietly. But before Jason could ask what she meant, Zara's eyes hardened. "There's more to this planet than you realize. Secrets buried deep beneath the surface. And I intend to make sure they stay buried." Jason stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had just said. But in that moment, he knew one thing for certain: he was caught in something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. And Zara wasn't just any alien. She was part of it. Something, or someone, meant to remain hidden. A truth, as she had put it, meant to stay buried. The wind howled as Jason and Zara crouched behind the jagged rock outcrop, their bodies pressed close together for shelter. The raiders' vehicle had long since disappeared over the horizon, but the danger wasn't over. Zara's grip on Jason's arm remained firm, her eyes scanning the vast, rocky landscape, her mind far ahead of the present. "We're not out of danger yet," Zara murmured, her voice calm but laced with urgency. Jason could feel the tension in the air, a quiet hum that seemed to echo from the ground itself. The reality of what had just happened began to settle in. They had barely escaped with their lives. Zara, an alien unlike any human he had ever seen, had saved him. But there was something else. She had a secret. And he needed to know what it was. "What do you mean, Zara? What's going on here?" Jason asked, keeping his voice low. She turned to him, her stormy blue eyes locking onto his with an intensity that almost made him flinch. "This planet, this place, it's not just a random location. It was chosen for a reason," she said softly, glancing over her shoulder as if the very rocks around them were listening. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Chosen by who? For what?" He was trying to piece things together, but her cryptic answers only raised more questions. Zara sighed, her gaze drifting toward the fading light of dusk. "There are things buried here, things no one should find. My people, the Tan Dominion, we've kept secrets for centuries, and Earth, your planet, is the key." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of secrets?" he pressed, his voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, her lips parting as if she was about to say something but couldn't bring herself to do it. Then she spoke, her words quiet but heavy with meaning. "A power. An ancient force that could change everything. And it's buried here, deep beneath the surface. If it's found, it could shift the balance of power across the galaxy. We can't let that happen." Jason's mind raced. He had been thrust into a world of danger and secrecy, with no way of understanding the full scope of what was unfolding around him. But Zara's urgency, the way she spoke about her people and the power beneath the planet's surface, made it clear, this was bigger than him. Bigger than anything he had ever imagined. "What do you need me to do?" Jason asked, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Zara met his gaze again, her expression softening for the first time. "I need you to trust me, Jason. We can't fight this alone." The last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape in shadow. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if awaiting the next move. Zara stood up, her silhouette tall and imposing against the darkening sky. Jason stood with her, unsure of what the future held, but certain of one thing, he had already crossed a line. He was in this now, and there was no turning back. Jason stood in the shadow of the rock, watching Zara as she surveyed the landscape. The night was descending quickly, the last vestiges of daylight fading behind the jagged cliffs. The eerie stillness of the barren land felt unsettling, almost as though it were holding its breath. Zara was not speaking, her focus completely consumed by something Jason couldn't see. He knew the danger was far from over, but there was still so much he didn't understand. He had never been involved in anything like this before, alien politics, ancient powers, secrets buried deep beneath the surface of a planet he barely knew. He had thought he was just on another routine mission. He had been wrong. "Zara, what exactly is buried here?" Jason's voice was low, his tone more pleading than demanding. "I need to know what I'm involved in." She turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable, before she sighed. "You really want to know?" Her voice was quiet, and Jason could sense the weight of the question. He nodded, stepping closer. "I have to. I didn't ask for this, but I'm here now. So tell me." Zara's gaze softened for a moment, but only for a brief second. Then, she looked away again, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It's an ancient artifact, Jason. A power unlike anything you could imagine. My people have guarded it for centuries, but some of us believe it should be shared. Not everyone agrees with that." Her words were measured, carefully chosen. Jason could see the conflict in her eyes. "What do you mean, shared?" he asked, still struggling to piece things together. Zara paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. "Some believe that the power of this artifact could elevate our species, bring us to the next level of evolution, if you will. But there are others who think it's too dangerous, too unpredictable. They believe that its power could destroy everything." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. The artifact wasn't just an object, it was a key to something much bigger, something that could change the entire galaxy. So, if this artifact falls into the wrong hands, it could be the end of us all, Zara finished, her voice cold and distant. Jason felt the weight of her words. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. He wasn't just trying to survive now, he was part of something that could determine the future of not just this planet, but entire civilizations. So what happens next? Jason asked, trying to focus on the present, on the steps they needed to take. Zara turned toward him, her expression firm. We need to find it before anyone else does. The raiders, the people who were after us, they're not the only ones looking for it. There are others. And they're more dangerous. Jason clenched his fists, the realization hitting him with full force. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting something much bigger than himself. He was in this now, whether he liked it or not. He had no choice but to move forward. All right, he said, his voice steady. Let's find this thing. And make sure it stays buried, like you said. Zara nodded, her eyes hardening with resolve. We're going to need help. And we're going to have to move quickly. As she turned and began to walk, Jason followed, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. The night was closing in, and the path ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear, they were in this together, and they would do whatever it took to keep the galaxy from falling into chaos. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the barren landscape. Jason and Zara had made their way deeper into the canyon, the terrain growing increasingly treacherous with each step. The air was thin, cold, and dry, pressing in on them with the weight of something unspoken. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Every moment they spent searching for the artifact was a moment closer to someone else finding it first. We need to hurry, Jason said, his voice hoarse from the dry air. Zara didn't reply immediately, but he could see the tension in her posture, the way she moved with a quiet determination. I know, she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. But we can't be reckless. We have to be smart. Jason nodded, knowing she was right. The last thing they needed was to make a mistake and lead the wrong people straight to them. As they moved forward, Zara stopped suddenly, raising her hand to signal Jason to halt. What is it? Jason asked, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Zara was staring ahead, her gaze focused. Almost as if she could see something he couldn't. There's a hidden entrance up ahead, she said, her voice steady. I can feel it. It's shielded. Jason squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of her words. He couldn't see anything, not in this low light. How do you know? He asked. Zara turned to him, her eyes flashing with an intensity that caught him off guard. Because I've been here before, she said, her voice low. I've seen this place. I felt it. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He had known that Zara was more than just a survivor of this world, but hearing her speak of it like this was unsettling. She wasn't just protecting him. She was hiding something from him. He opened his mouth to ask, but she raised her hand, silencing him. Not now, Jason. We don't have time for questions. Jason clenched his jaw, frustrated but understanding the urgency. All right. Lead the way. Zara nodded and began walking again, her movements fluid, almost as if she were gliding over the uneven terrain. Jason followed close behind, his senses alert. They approached the spot Zara had indicated, a patch of ground that seemed indistinguishable from the rest of the canyon floor. But as they reached it, a soft hum filled the air, a low frequency that Jason could feel in his bones. Without warning, the ground in front of them shifted, revealing a hidden entrance, concealed by the natural rock formations. Zara stepped forward, unhesitating, and Jason followed, his heart racing with anticipation. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for them to pass through side by side. The walls were smooth, as though carved by some ancient force, and the air inside was thick with a strange, metallic scent. Zara's expression was unreadable, but Jason could feel the tension radiating off her. This is it, she said, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. Jason glanced around, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. The unknown, the artifact, the danger, it was all here, waiting for them. And he had no idea what he was about to walk into. Are you ready? Zara asked, her voice almost a whisper. Jason nodded, the uncertainty in his gut growing stronger with every passing second. I think so. The moment the words left his mouth, Zara stepped forward, disappearing into the shadows of the cave-like entrance. Jason followed closely, his breath shallow, as the world outside seemed to fade away. The walls of the passageway closed in around them, and the only sound was the steady echo of their footsteps. Zara led him deeper, moving with an ease that suggested she knew exactly where she was going. Jason's mind raced, questions flooding in. But he knew better than to ask now. Whatever lay ahead, they were in it together. And there was no turning back. The tunnel stretched before them, a dark, narrow path that seemed to swallow the light from their flashlights. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, with an odd metallic scent that made Jason's head spin. They moved in silence, Zara's steps sure and confident, while Jason's were heavier, as if the weight of the unknown was pressing down on him. The walls of the passage were smooth, almost unnaturally so, and Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just walking through a natural formation. There was something ancient about this place, something built by hands far beyond anything he could comprehend. As they walked deeper, the silence between them grew more palpable. Jason felt the need to speak, to break the tension, but he wasn't sure what to say. Zara had been distant, focused entirely on the path ahead. Whatever she was thinking, she wasn't sharing it. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure of what kind of questions were even safe to ask. Zara, he said finally, his voice low. How long have you known about this place? About the artifact? Zara didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the path ahead, but Jason could see the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her body seemed to stiffen at the question. After a moment, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. I've known about it for a long time. Longer than you can imagine. Her tone was heavy with something Jason couldn't quite place. Was it regret? Guilt? But I didn't know what it was until recently. I didn't understand the full scope of what it could do. Jason nodded, processing her words. It made sense now, Zara wasn't just here by chance. She had been sent here for a reason, just like him. She had a purpose in all of this, and it wasn't just survival. It was something bigger. And what is it? The artifact, Jason pressed, his curiosity finally getting the better of him. Zara's eyes flicked to him for a brief moment before she returned her gaze to the tunnel ahead. It's an ancient power, she said, her voice almost a whisper. A power that could change everything. For better or worse. And it's not meant for just anyone. Jason felt a chill run through him. So who decides who gets it? He asked, his heart pounding in his chest. Zara's lips tightened into a thin line. There are those who believe it should be kept hidden. That it's too dangerous to be used. And then there are others who believe it should be shared, that it could help our species advance. Jason's mind raced, the implications of her words settling over him like a heavy weight. This wasn't just some random artifact, it was a catalyst for something far greater. A power that could change the galaxy. He felt both awe and fear coursing through him. He wasn't prepared for this. He hadn't signed up for a war over ancient power. But now that he was here, there was no turning back. They reached the end of the passage, and the walls opened up into a vast chamber. The air here was cooler, the space larger and more open. Zara stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. We're close, she murmured. Jason looked around, trying to make sense of the place. The chamber was empty, but it felt alive, as though it were waiting for them. He could almost feel the pulse of the place, the hum of energy that seemed to radiate from the walls. Zara's gaze was fixed on something in the far corner of the room. It's here, she said. She began walking toward it, her movements purposeful. Jason followed, his heart racing. As they approached the corner, Jason saw what she was looking at. There, hidden in the shadows, was a stone pedestal. On top of it, glowing faintly, was a small object. It was difficult to make out in the dim light, but it looked ancient. Powerful. Zara reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the artifact. "This is it," she whispered. Jason's breath caught in his throat. This was the moment. The artifact that could change everything. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. Zara's hand hovered above the artifact, the soft glow from the stone pedestal casting eerie shadows across her face. Jason could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the air thick with anticipation. For a moment, neither of them spoke, as though the very room was holding its breath, waiting. "This is it," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible, as though speaking too loudly might disturb the fragile peace of the chamber. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, the magnitude of what was happening slowly settling into his bones. He took a cautious step forward, eyes never leaving the glowing object. "What happens now?" Jason asked, his voice hoarse with uncertainty. Zara finally lowered her hand, gently touching the surface of the artifact. The room seemed to hum in response, a deep, resonant vibration that Jason could feel in his bones. "Now, we see if we are ready for it," Zara said, her voice steady but tinged with something else, something Jason couldn't place. He stood there, frozen for a moment, watching her. There was something about the way she touched the artifact that made him uneasy, as though it wasn't just an object to be taken, but a force that could consume them both. "What do you mean, ready for it?" Jason asked, his anxiety rising. Zara didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced the surface of the artifact, moving with an almost reverent grace. "This artifact isn't just power, Jason," she said quietly. "It's a test. Only those who are worthy can unlock its true potential." Jason felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Worthy?" he asked. Zara nodded, her eyes still fixed on the artifact. "Yes. It's not about strength or skill. It's about understanding, about balance. It tests your mind, your spirit." Jason felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. This wasn't just a relic, it was a trial. He had no idea what kind of test it would be, but something told him that whatever happened next would change everything. "How do we know if we're ready?" he asked. Zara took a deep breath, finally pulling her hand away from the artifact. The hum of the room faded, leaving an eerie silence behind. "We don't," she said softly. "But we must try." Without another word, Zara moved closer to the pedestal, her hand now hovering just above the artifact. Jason watched her, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to stop her, to ask her if she was sure, but another part of him knew there was no turning back. This was their moment. The artifact was here, and whatever lay within it had to be uncovered. Zara's hand descended, touching the surface of the artifact. The room seemed to come alive, the glow from the pedestal intensifying, filling the space with a brilliant light. Jason blinked, momentarily blinded by the intensity. When his vision cleared, the room was different. The walls seemed to shimmer, the air thick with energy. Zara stood frozen, her hand still on the artifact, her expression unreadable. Jason stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Zara," he called, but his voice felt small in the vast, shifting space. Zara didn't respond. Instead, she turned her head slightly, her eyes glowing faintly, as though they were reflecting the light from the artifact itself. Jason felt a strange pull, something drawing him toward her. It wasn't just the artifact, it was Zara herself. There was a change in her, something different about her presence. The air around them felt charged, alive with possibilities. "Zara?" Jason tried again, reaching out. She blinked, and in that moment, it was as if the world around them snapped back into focus. The shimmering walls, the heavy air, they all returned to normal, and Zara slowly pulled her hand away from the artifact. "It's done," she said softly. Jason stood there, staring at her. "What happened?" he asked, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. Zara turned to him, her expression soft but serious. "We've awakened it," she said. "But now, we face the consequences." Jason's heart skipped a beat. Whatever the artifact had done, it wasn't over yet. They were no longer just searching for it, they had unleashed something that neither of them could control. Jason felt the weight of Zara's words settle over him like a thick fog. "We've awakened it." The artifact, the force they had just unleashed, seemed to pulse with an energy that was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The room around them was eerily still, the faint glow of the pedestal the only light illuminating the dark, vast chamber. Zara's eyes, still glowing faintly from her contact with the artifact, met Jason's, and for a moment, he saw something there, something ancient and powerful that he couldn't fully understand. "What does that mean?" Jason asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile peace of the moment. Zara took a step back from the pedestal, her expression serious. "It means we've triggered the artifact's activation process," she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "The power inside it is waking up, and once it's fully awakened, we won't be able to control it. It will be beyond any of our abilities." Jason's heart pounded in his chest. The room seemed to close in around him, the air growing thick with tension. He had no idea what they had just unleashed, but the gravity of Zara's words hit him hard. "So, what now?" he asked, his mind racing. Zara's eyes hardened, and she stepped toward him, her movements purposeful. "Now, we must keep moving. We can't stay here." Jason didn't argue. He had no clue what was coming, but he knew they had to get out of that chamber. As Zara turned, Jason followed closely behind. The darkness of the tunnel felt oppressive as they made their way back down the path, the once quiet hum of the artifact now replaced with a subtle vibration that seemed to echo in their bones. "We can't let anyone else find it," Zara said, her voice low but urgent. Jason looked at her, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Who else is looking for it?" Zara's gaze flicked back to him, her face pale in the dim light. "There are others, Jason. Others who will stop at nothing to claim it for themselves." Jason felt a chill run through him at her words. They weren't alone in this search, the stakes were much higher than he had imagined. "Who are these people?" he pressed. Zara didn't respond immediately, her steps quickening as they moved deeper into the passage. "They're from the Tan Dominion," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "But there are others. Powerful factions who believe this artifact could change the balance of power in the galaxy. And they'll do whatever it takes to get it." Jason felt the weight of her words settle heavily on his shoulders. "So, we're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for control over something that could change everything," he said. Zara nodded, her expression grim. "Exactly. And if it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences will be catastrophic." Jason's mind raced. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. They weren't just trying to survive, they were in the midst of something far bigger than they had ever anticipated. The fate of entire worlds could depend on what happened next. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Jason's thoughts turned back to the artifact. What had they awakened? What kind of power were they dealing with? And how could they possibly stop it from falling into the wrong hands? The uncertainty gnawed at him. "How do we stop it?" he asked, his voice urgent. Zara didn't answer immediately, her eyes scanning the dark tunnel ahead. "I don't know," she said finally. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Jason nodded, determination filling him. Whatever it took, they would stop the artifact from falling into the wrong hands. And he would stay by Zara's side, no matter what. They had already come this far, and now there was no turning back. The future was uncertain, but Jason knew one thing for sure: he would fight, and he would protect Zara. They had a mission to complete, and the stakes had never been higher. The passage ahead seemed endless, a dark, winding labyrinth with no end in sight. Jason kept pace with Zara, their footsteps echoing through the stillness of the tunnel. The tension between them was palpable, the weight of the artifact's power hanging over them like a cloud. Every step they took felt like they were moving closer to something they couldn't control, but there was no turning back now. The flickering light from their torches illuminated the smooth stone walls, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark. The air was thick with an uneasy stillness, the only sound their breathing and the occasional creak of the walls shifting. Jason's mind raced as he thought back to Zara's words. There were others. The Tan Dominion, and those who would stop at nothing to claim the artifact. Jason wasn't sure what to make of it all, but one thing was clear, he couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. How much further? Jason asked, breaking the silence. Zara didn't look at him, her eyes focused on the path ahead. Not much, she said, her voice low and steady. We're getting close. Jason swallowed, his throat dry. Zara, what happens? If we can't stop them? What happens if they get to the artifact before we do? She finally turned to look at him, her eyes filled with a sadness he hadn't seen before. Then we risk everything, Jason. This planet, and everything on it, could fall into the wrong hands. We can't let that happen. We have to keep moving. Jason nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always thought of himself as a soldier, someone trained to face danger head-on, but this was different. This wasn't just about fighting for survival, it was about preventing something much bigger, much more dangerous, from being unleashed. They continued their journey in silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the tunnel, the walls pressing in on them as if the entire place was alive, watching them. Every step felt like they were getting closer to something monumental, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The last turn in the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber, its high ceilings lost in darkness. In the center of the room, there was a pedestal, much like the one they had seen before, but this one was different. The artifact was gone, replaced by a swirling energy, a vortex of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with an unearthly power. This is it, Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. Jason's heart raced as he stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the swirling energy. What is it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara's eyes met his, a look of regret crossing her face. This is the true power of the artifact, she said. The energy inside it can either save or destroy everything. And we're the only ones who can decide which it will be. Jason felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The power they had unleashed was far greater than he could have imagined. How do we stop it? He asked, his voice urgent. Zara hesitated, her gaze shifting toward the vortex. I don't know, she said. But we have to try. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Jason took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. There was no time for hesitation. He had no idea how they would stop the energy from consuming everything, but he knew one thing for certain, they couldn't let it destroy the galaxy. With a nod from Zara, they moved toward the pedestal, the hum of the vortex growing louder with each step. Whatever came next, they had to face it together. And no matter the cost, they would fight to keep the power of the artifact from falling into the wrong hands. Jason and Zara stood before the swirling vortex of energy, its hum reverberating through their bodies. The chamber around them seemed to pulse with life, the air thick with tension and raw power. The artifact was no longer the small, contained object they had found, it had transformed into something far greater, something that could reshape the very fabric of the universe. Jason's heart raced as he glanced at Zara. Her expression was one of quiet resolve, but her eyes betrayed the fear she was trying so hard to hide. We have to stop it, Zara, Jason said, his voice strained. But how? We don't even know what we're dealing with. Zara stepped closer to the pedestal, her eyes locked on the swirling mass of light and shadow. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But we can't let it consume everything. If we don't do something now, it will destroy everything we know. Jason swallowed hard, trying to keep his thoughts clear. The power of the artifact was overwhelming, but they had no choice. Then we fight it, he said, his voice firm. Zara nodded, her expression hardening with determination. Yes, we fight. But we do it together. As they approached the pedestal, the energy in the room seemed to shift. The vortex grew brighter, its pull becoming stronger, almost as if it were aware of their presence. Jason felt the weight of the energy pressing down on him, like a physical force trying to drag him into the heart of the vortex. But he kept moving forward, knowing that they had no other choice. They had come too far to back down now. Zara reached out, her hand hovering just above the energy. "I think I can channel it," she said, her voice steady. "If I can control the flow, we might be able to shut it down." Jason looked at her, his brow furrowed. "You think you can control it? How?" Zara's eyes flicked to him for a brief moment before returning to the vortex. "I've felt this energy before," she said quietly. "I know how it works. I just need to focus. Stay close, Jason. If something goes wrong, you have to get out of here. You can't be near it when it explodes." Jason shook his head, taking a step forward. "I'm not leaving you behind. We do this together." Zara hesitated, her eyes meeting his for the briefest moment, before she nodded. "All right," she said softly. "Together." With that, she placed her hand on the surface of the pedestal. The vortex roared to life, the energy intensifying, swirling around them both. Jason could feel the power building, thrumming through the air, vibrating in his chest. Zara closed her eyes, her breathing slow and steady as she focused on the energy. Jason stood by her side, his hand hovering just inches from hers, ready to act if things went wrong. The room seemed to hold its breath as Zara concentrated, her entire being focused on the swirling mass of energy in front of them. Slowly, the chaos of the vortex began to subside, its intensity fading as Zara's control over it grew stronger. "It's working," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. But just as they thought they had it under control, the energy pulsed one final time, sending a shockwave through the room. Jason and Zara were thrown back, slamming against the stone walls. Jason's head spun, his vision blurring as he tried to get back on his feet. Zara was already up, her eyes wide with alarm. "Jason," she cried, rushing to his side. He groaned, pushing himself up. "I'm fine," he said, though his head was spinning. "What happened?" Zara's expression was one of fear. "It's not over," she said, her voice trembling. "The artifact, it's changing again. It's trying to escape." Jason looked toward the pedestal, his heart racing as he saw the vortex shifting once more, its light becoming more erratic, pulsing wildly as if it were alive. "We have to stop it now," he said, his voice urgent. Zara nodded, her hand reaching for the pedestal once more. This time, there was no hesitation in her movements. She pressed her palm firmly against the surface, and with a final, desperate push, the energy surged. The room erupted in light, the vortex expanding outward, and for a moment, Jason thought everything would be consumed by it. But then, as quickly as it had started, the energy collapsed in on itself, leaving only silence in its wake. Zara slowly pulled her hand away from the pedestal, her breathing labored. Jason stared at her, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. Zara didn't answer immediately, her eyes scanning the room. After a long pause, she nodded. "For now," she said, her voice soft but filled with exhaustion. "But we've only just begun."